Welcome to WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast series by PharmaVOICE. This episode was made possible by a generous sponsorship from Cardinal Health Specialty Solutions. For more information, please visit cardinalhealth.com/specialty solutions. In this episode, Taryn meets with Carolyn Morgan, President, Precision Effect.
Carolyn, welcome to the PharmaVOICE WOW podcast program.
Thanks, Taryn. Thrilled to be here.
It's been a little bit since we last chatted when you were named a PharmaVOICE 100, so it's great to catch up. You know, in that time, the agency's gone through a couple of different iterations, and I'd like to know how things are going. So Precision Effect is now part of Precision Medicine Group, which is a somewhat unique position in the agency world. Talk to me about how that agency interfaces with the umbrella group.
Sure, happy to. Well, it might be helpful first just to kind of talk about who Precision Medicine Group is and, you know, kind of the journey that we've been on since we've been a part of Precision Medicine Group. The company is founded by Mark Klein and Ethan Leder, kind of serial entrepreneurs, and they identified in 2012 that they felt like there was some opportunity in the life sciences industry to really create a best-of-breed organization, and really saw that in kind of two different paths, one being on the R&D side of the business and the other being on the more commercial side of the business. And I think that's kind of what makes us unique, is that we really are able to service the life sciences industry on those two different tracks. On the R&D side, we really focus on helping companies think through their biomarker discovery programs, really all the way from, you know, what should that look, feel, and sound like, through to making sure that we're maximizing the time to market and the ability for them to really achieve their goals in a quick and succinct way. You know, as soon as you file for your patent, you know, that clock starts ticking. So how can we make sure that you're finding the right patients as fast as possible? That biomarker program and consultation, as well as companion diagnostic work that we do, really assists with that. And, you know, we take that one step further with our CRO team, who is focused on rare and oncology, and really ensuring that we're enrolling trials as quickly as possible and making sure that we're constantly looking and crunching the data as well. We've got an amazing team of data scientists who are looking at the data as it's going through the clinical trial and helping our clients really think through how do we maximize success and mitigate risks. And so really across the R&D side, we're really partnering with our clients really early on to help them bring a new product to market, which is a fun part of the process, and it's one that has really been educational for us on the more commercial side. On the commercial side, and that whole side of the business on the R&D, that's all called Precision for Medicine. And then on the R&D side, we're all kind of under an umbrella called Precision Value and Health. And on this side of the business, we have everything from investor relations through to HEOR, and which is like global pricing and reimbursement strategy, thinking through your early distribution strategy, through to payer. We have the largest payer agency in the country through Precision for Value, and making sure that we're really taking care of how does the payer think, how is the payer going to see this information, what is it that they need to see, what are the models, thinking really all through that area of the communication as well. And then one of our more recent acquisitions is Ethos Communications, and so we've got a team in Yardley, Pennsylvania that's really helping to craft that early science story. And making sure that we're thinking about things both on the med affairs as well as on the marketing promotional side. How is that science being crafted? How are we talking to those KOLs and those HCPs? How are we identifying our KOLs? What is our publication strategy? And really, you know, that entire scientific communications process. And then there's us. You know, we're really taking all of that from more of a traditional unique approach, where we're saying, okay, now we have the science, we've got that all buttoned down, we know what we want to say to the payers and how we're going to make sure we're getting coverage. How are we taking this to the masses from an HCP, patient, and consumer standpoint? And so what's been amazing for us with Precision Medicine Group overall is that we can bring all of these different talents to the table for our clients really seamlessly. So a client can come to us with a problem, and we can pull in somebody on the data science side, or someone from the CRO team to help find a needle in a haystack, or, you know, somebody from the payer communications or payer strat team to say, you know, how should we be thinking about this from a payer standpoint? And it doesn't need to feel like, you know, this cumbersome process. It just becomes a really curated team for our client based on what their needs are. And, you know, we've really found that we've been working with a lot of our clients around the table across the different PMG businesses, which has been just a lot of fun. I can tell you I'm a lot smarter for it.
You're funny. It's incredibly complex what you are doing. It's really from bench to bedside and
Yes.
beyond.
Yes, it really is. And, Mark and Ethan have done such a great job creating a really seamless culture. A lot of leaders that are really comfortable pulling each other together and recommending one another. We're about 1,900 folks now and about $450 million in revenue. So they're certainly doing something right.
Wow, the company has grown tremendously.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun to be a part of it.
Yeah, congratulations to all of you. So in your role, though, particularly, and I'm assuming that is mostly on the commercial side, but I would imagine you get pulled into some of the other areas as well.
Yes, and so, my role is to really oversee the advertising agency Precision Effect. I also play a big role on the leadership of Ethos Communications. But I think, across the board, wherever any kind of commercialization strategy is needed, I'm happy to sit down with any of the other groups with their clients and really help. And also, as you can imagine, we do a lot of the marketing services for some of the teams as well as the company overall.
Sure. And I identify it as a unique kind of group. Do you see it that way as well? I don't know that I know of another holding company that works the same way you all do.
I certainly haven't seen anyone that is as dedicated to really making sure we've got all these different pieces to the puzzle. And, I think we've really focused on, with every acquisition, ours was in 2015 now, which is kind of crazy that it was, over 4 years ago. I think Mark and Ethan have really looked for a really strong cultural fit, and I think that has been the key to the success. Is I look across to the other company presidents, whether it's Carlos or Kelly, or Zach or Nate, and I'm so comfortable to bring them into our client conversations, and I think that makes it really seamless and comfortable.
Excellent. Obviously, running an agency requires balancing a lot of different and sometimes competing agendas. So how do you set the strategic vision for Precision Effect?
Well, I think, you sent the questions in advance, and this is one of the ones that I spent some time thinking about, because I think we have really, for a long period of time, probably for good since 2008, have had a singular position as an agency, which I think has positioned us uniquely in the marketplace, which is to be the only agency that's working with companies who are seeking to change the standard of care. And I think that's really been a big part of our success and a big part of our strategic vision. It helps people to understand what kind of company we want to be, what kind of clients we want to work with. We tend to be risk takers. We feel really comfortable charting uncharted territories and figuring out the way to solve complicated problems. And we love launches and really figuring out, how do we change the standard of care? And that requires so much behavior change, really across the board. How do you get physicians to change the way that they're practicing? How do you get patients to be, open to getting a new novel therapy or a new way of being treated? And, I think that has been something that we've been really hard fast to in our entire history and also moving into our future. I think the other piece of this too is, not only is it who do we want to be and who are we from a positioning standpoint, but it's also our internal culture. We've spent a lot of time making sure that we're taking care of our teams, and in just last year, we did our own traditional branding process internally. We said, okay, we had this culture of beyonding beforehand, and we found that, as we grew so fast, that was actually kind of taking on its own nomenclature. That wasn't entirely the intent. It started to turn into more of an outward-facing thing, like how are we doing more externally versus how are we building each other up. And so we wanted to go back in and do the hard work to figure out how do our teams feel about our culture? What do they want to see? What do they need? And through that process, we started to hear a lot of the same things. And I think it's true of most agencies. The ones that are successful and doing a good job really are celebrating the fact that we're teams. We're a large team, but then we're also individual teams helping each client. And so we've relaunched our culture as one of we-centricity. And, we're celebrating we-centric moments, whether that's through doing we-centric toasts every Friday to celebrate different team wins, whether it's nominating peers and for cheers and giving them little opportunities to be recognized in terms of the entire organization through our company meetings. We're really trying to make sure that we're celebrating those smaller moments where we're building each other up and we're all taking responsibility for, hey, I've got this project and I'm passing that baton. I want to make sure it's as good as possible for my team member, and that we're always proud of whatever piece of work that we're doing before it leaves the shop.
Excellent, yes, because culture is really at the heart of an agency. So, and as you grow so fast, as you said, it's hard to maintain that kind of culture that may when you started, it might have been something different than where you are today.
It's so true, and it really took for us, we grew, I think it was in 2017, 40%, and that's a big leap.
That is a big leap.
And that was one of those years where we needed to kind of stop afterwards and say, okay, we need to slow down and catch our breath. And when you add that many employees into an organization, you need to also stop and say, okay, who are we now? Because we're not necessarily who we were, but we don't want to lose the essence.
Sure.
And we need to make sure that we're just being smart about it, and we're being thoughtful, and that we're also listening to what it is that our team members need, because what you need when you're 100 people is really different than what you need when you're 150, and making sure, or 175, and now approaching 200. It's like we have to keep up with what the team needs are, and it's different workflows, it's different processes, and you just got to make sure you're giving everybody what they need to be successful.
Absolutely. So congratulations on the growth. You, became president about 6 years ago of Precision Effect?
Yeah.
Whirlwind, I would imagine. Catch your breath, right, moments. But, during that time, you said just a little bit earlier that being part of that PMG group has really given you a broader knowledge set. What are some of the other lessons you have learned in leading the organization over the past 6 years or so?
Oh, there's so many. I always say every single day I drive into the agency, and I've never run a company that's big before. So sometimes people are like, well, what have you done before? And I'm like, I haven't really done it before. And, you've got to just kind of take a breath and sit down. And I'm really lucky because I've got a great team. And people who are really great at saying, hey, we need to address this, or this is an area of concern. And I think helping people to trust their guts has been one of the biggest lessons I've learned. You always know when something isn't going well, and being able to raise your hand as soon as possible and know that you're going to have a team that's going to come in and support you and not judge you is, I think, the most important thing I've learned from a cultural standpoint. It's okay if something's not going right. We're human. Things are going to go wrong. And making sure that we're identifying it early and that there's no surprises, I think, is super important. But I've also learned that I always need to be learning. I don't have all the answers, and I'm not afraid to fail. And I'd rather fail fast. I'd rather make a decision and move forward. And then if it's been something that didn't work out, I'm okay with going back and saying to the team, sorry, you guys, that wasn't the right choice. Let's regroup and let's reband together and let's move forward with another alternative. And I think I'm not afraid of going back and saying that didn't work. And I think that's been the biggest lesson is my team is very respectful if I make a wrong judgment call or if I make a mistake. You just have to own it and say, look, that wasn't the right direction. Let's go over here instead. And I think that banding the team together in those moments is really important. And I think the other thing too is being open to listening to your team and making sure that you're constantly learning. I'm constantly listening to podcasts, and I'm constantly trying to learn from other leaders. I never think that my job as a leader is done. I know that I can improve all the time. I know the agency can improve all the time, and so I'm constantly seeking additional inputs so I can see whether or not that is going to work well with us and being able to roll that out in a fast and quick way.
Well, those are true marks of an authentic leader. So congratulations to you, and for being open to being vulnerable, because it's not easy to stand up and say, hey, I made a mistake. So kudos to you.
No, thank you for that. And, it's constant. I'm going to make more.
It's what happens, right? You're working in some uncharted territories, and so there isn't a clear guide path, and so you do have to make choices based on the best data you have at the time, and maybe it is the wrong choice at that time. That doesn't mean it'll be the wrong choice the next time. So
exactly. And you know what? If you go through a whole year and you haven't made any mistakes, I think you're probably not taking any risks, and you're probably not growing.
I'm glad you said that because that's exactly right. The easiest way to not make a mistake is to not do anything new. So
exactly.
Coming in, and you said you had never run a company this large before. So talk to me about where you came into the agency ecosystem. Talk to me a little bit about your career journey.
This is, I think, a journey that a lot of people have. You start out as a young professional, and you're not really sure exactly what you want to do. And I think sometimes it takes a little bit of a couple different tries to kind of get your feet under you and figure out what you're going to be successful at. And I think I was not immune to that. I think in my first job I was not successful, and kind of took a lot of hard knocks, and really came back from that and said to myself, who do I want to be, and what kind of contributor do I want to be? And I found myself at my first agency. My brother was in pharma, and he said to me, he was a brand manager at the time at Johnson & Johnson, and he said, Carolyn, I think you'd be really good in an agency. You've got the personality for it. You're not afraid to kind of take the next step. And I said, okay, well, maybe I'll try that out. And there was a couple agencies in the Boston area at the time. One is KHJ, and I ended up working there for Judy Habib, who was a fantastic first boss and mentor, and somebody who really saw a lot in me, which I really appreciated. And I learned a lot at that agency. At the time, I was doing public relations, and I learned that I loved agency life. My brother was right. I just enjoyed it so much. I loved going from thing to thing. I loved that no 2 days were the same. I loved that I was constantly learning. You could never be the smartest person in the room. I loved all the dynamics of it, and that my clients were constantly keeping me on my toes. I just thought that was fantastic. I also learned that I didn't really love public relations as much. That wasn't my thing, although I learned so much doing it for 3 years. Those were still the days where you could actually pick up the phone and call the editor and pitch your story. And I think that taught me not to get completely tied and wrapped up in the outcome of every single thing that you were doing. And that was a really great lesson for me to learn and be able to take from that. And I also learned there that I had two friends at the same time that were going through really unfortunate health situations, one from growing up and the other one from college, and they both ended up passing away of different forms of cancer within 6 months of each other. Ooh. And that was a big wake-up call for me. I mean, I was still really young then, and I was like, what do you mean we're not invincible? This doesn't happen. And because of that, I really dove into our healthcare accounts. And so, I spent a lot of time at that agency really kind of figuring out who I was and what I wanted to do. And I also realized there, and Judy had tapped me pretty early on for business development, and I saw that business development was something that I really enjoyed. But I knew I wanted to be more in the healthcare sector. And so then the next agency I went to after that was called BBK Worldwide. They're also in the Boston area, and they were an agency dedicated to working on clinical trials. And I loved it. I figured out there that I had a really interesting and random knack for understanding clinical programs and protocols and helping to figure out who the right patients were for a particular disease state and messaging, and really dove into that and loved it. Again, there I ended up leading accounts and was on a big piece of business there that really enabled me to see all facets of the organization, and did a lot of new business for them as well. But after a while, I wanted to be back on the true commercial side, and I started looking around the Boston market. And at the time, which is kind of funny now looking at how Boston has exploded, there was only two agencies dedicated to healthcare. One was Lima Millette, and the other one, which is now was absorbed, is gone. And so I went to Lima Millette and interviewed there, and Bruce Lehman, who ended up becoming my great mentor and somebody who I still talk to and who I think the world of, hired me, and I came in and started in the business development team. And then, actually on the account team, and then moved quickly over to business development. And then he identified early on that he wanted me to take over the agency when he retired, which blew my mind. I was young. I was maybe just 30, and I sat down with him and I was like, are you sure? This feels a little crazy. And he was like, no. He's like, I think you've got what it takes. He's like, but I'm not going to just hand you the organization. We had just acquired a West Coast agency at the time, and they hadn't been indoctrinated into our way. And he said, I want you to go out there and show me you can do it. And if you can, in 2013, when my daughter's graduating, I'm going to be ready to retire, and you can come back and take over the agency, but you have to prove yourself first. And so my husband and I moved out to Southern California in 2008. And on a personal note, I had two sets of twins while we were out there, but from a professional standpoint, was able to really establish a fantastic agency out there. I worked really closely with the team that's still in place and his leadership team out there, helping to identify them and move them up the ranks and create an office and a culture there that is still very much alive to this day. And very proud of the fact that we're one of the largest agencies on the West Coast. And I think one of the things that's made it so successful on the West Coast is that we always approach it like as an autonomous office. All of our offices are autonomous. So if you're a client of that office, you have your full service team there. And I think that's what's made the West Coast truly a standout in terms of West Coast agency talent. And then in 2013, I had achieved my goal of growing that office, grew it tripled it in size, and then moved back and became president of the agency in 2013. Bruce retired. And then at the same time, we had been previously owned by HealthStar, and they had said, we're going to take considerations for putting the agencies out, and that's when we met Precision Medicine Group. Mark and Ethan came in and had looked at a bunch of different agencies and really thought that Lima Millette fit really well into their vision for where they wanted to go and the type of agency that they wanted to have as part of their team. And the fact that we were dedicated to working with companies that were changing the standard of care really felt like it was aligned to their mission of being able to think about biomarker-driven programs in a different way and helping clients really accelerate that time to market while maximizing opportunities and mitigating risks. And so we became part of the Precision Medicine Group family in 2015, and it has been amazing. They really saw a little engine that could and said, we want to just put wind beneath you guys and give you guys opportunities. And so they helped us to apply resources, think about things differently, and it's just been amazing growth ever since. We've doubled in size literally since they acquired us, probably more than that. And it's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun. I can't complain. I've got a great job. I'm very fortunate. And, I spend most of my days smiling and laughing and learning, and, you can't really beat that.
Okay, wow.
Sorry if that was too much information.
No, it was like, whoosh, my goodness. But it does lead me to one of my other questions is that, you are really noted for your ability to have that work-life balance, 2 sets of twins, growing an agency, taking over another agency. That's just a lot. How do you manage it all?
I don't know that I always do it well, if I'm being completely honest. I think, I think some days I do it better than others. I think I do have most of the time a smile on my face, which probably makes it appear that I'm handling it better than I am. But, I'm really lucky. And a big part of it is the team that I have both at home and at work. I'm certainly not doing either one alone, not even remotely. My husband is just a force and just keeps things on the rails at home, which is amazing. A few years ago, we kind of made the joint decision as a family that, he was going to take a little bit of a step back in his career, which, I'm always so grateful for, and it was a tough decision for him because he was very successful. And, he said, I want to be able to give you this opportunity to be able to see what you can really make with this. And because we had 2 sets of twins that were 26 months apart, they're very close in age, so it's like 4
having
kids.
4 babies at the same time.
It was a lot. And, he's like, I think one of us needs to kind of do this because this is insane.
Oh, my goodness.
And we, for the first 4 years, I think it was probably the first 3 years of the second set, he was still working full-time too. And then he kind of, together we came to the decision, and he said, I think, I got to do this. And, since then he's just done an amazing job of taking care of the home life so that I can be able to focus here. And so I've got an amazing partner is really the short answer. And then from a work standpoint, it's again the teams. I've got such great leadership across all the different offices, and I know I can count on them, and I know that they're going to let me know if there's any kind of issues. And I also try to meet with as many employees on an ongoing basis as I can just to make sure that I've got a constant feel of the culture and a pulse on how things are going. But the biggest thing I think that I do is I try to be present. I try to turn my phone over. The phone is the worst thing that's ever been invented. These iPhones, I love it because it keeps me connected, but at the same time it's also my biggest Achilles heel. So I try to turn it over in every meeting that I'm in so I can completely be present with whoever I'm with. And I do the same thing when I'm home. The good thing is that both sides of my life are so kind of chaotic that they both demand that I'm present.
Yeah. I can see that.
And my kids are now, they're 9 and 7. I've got 3 girls and a boy, and they'll call me out on it. That now if I'm on my phone, they'll say, "Mom, get off your phone." And I'm like, okay, and that's the agreement. If I'm with them, that's their time. And the same thing here. If I'm here, I'm all in, and I want to make sure that everybody's getting from me what they need so that they can go about their day and be as successful as possible.
I think that's a great lesson, and it's fair enough. You're right. When you be present when you're supposed to be present, I think that's an important lesson for everybody. So, you kind of touched on a little bit about your leadership style and being present and making sure that you're connecting with everybody through the agency. How else would you define yourself as a leader?
I try very, very hard to be nimble. You always go into situations and into meetings and into moments with, your own kind of predisposed thoughts, and I try to be open to what it is that I'm taking in, and I'm okay with changing my mind, and I think that is something that people see with me, is that I can be nimble. I can say I'm wrong. I can, say let's go back and start from scratch, or, be able to step in and help people. I think that that's been something. I try to be approachable. I think that's probably the better word for it, is yes, I'm nimble and flexible, but more importantly, I think I'm very approachable. I think people feel like they can come in and sit down with me, and I think that's an important thing to maintain. With that, it's always an open door policy. If there's something wrong, I want to know, and I want to help, and I want to be able to fix it. And if there's something that's a success, I want to be a part of the team celebrating it too.
Sure.
And and that's I think that's really important. There's nothing that makes me more happy than when I see my team come back from a really awesome pitch or a great client meeting, and you see them just filled with just pride, and that is such an amazing thing to do. And making sure we're celebrating those little successes, I think, is really important, and that we've tried to really amplify that through our kind of we-centric approach. I also try to, live by my word. I take vacations. I put my out of office on. I was just recently on vacation, and it said, I'm not in the office right now. I'm in a lake playing with my kids. I want people to have the ability to be able to do that, and I want them to see that I'm doing that, and that it's something that's really important. At the end of the day, your family is really what matters, and that's, I think, an important lesson, and I truly feel that way. And, I want to be able to support all the employees when they're going through that, or whatever it is that they have in their personal lives that it really is meaningful for them. I want that to be something that they celebrate and that they feel proud about, and that they feel comfortable being able to do whatever it is that they need to do. I also try to find time to exercise. I mean, that's something that's really helped me to stay, I think, straight and narrow. You got to get all the energy out, and you've got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because the days can be long, and I try to really make sure. And my children always ask me, why are you on the Peloton bike? Why are you on your bike? What are you doing? And I'm like, this is what's keeping me healthy for you.
Right.
And
this is my sanity.
Yeah. Well, and making sure that they understand that I'm doing this because, this is I got to keep my heart healthy, and I got to make sure that I'm sweating it out sometimes.
Sure. So all of that is amazing, but I have to ask you about your nickname, the Velvet Hammer. Who came up with that, and what does that mean?
So Nicole Stark came up with that, and she's been with the agency, I think since 2009, and she's somebody who has just grown and done amazing things within the organization. And when I moved out to the West Coast in 2008, we had a really tough situation with our largest client out there. They weren't treating us that great, and the work was good, and that from a day-to-day perspective, things were going okay. But overall in the relationship and the way that they were talking to the team members, the way that the things were happening on a day-to-day level, when you got outside of the actual work going back and forth, just the tone of the account was really off. And I kept talking to the client about it, and eventually we needed to part ways, which was a really tough decision, because it was I think at the time it was 40% of our revenue out there, and so it was one of my scariest big moments as a leader in the organization. And I remember calling Bruce and saying, I think I need to, resign this account. And, thankfully he was like, I trust you, and if this is what you think you need to do, then you need to do that. And, I talked to the CEO of the company, I talked to the lead marketers, and, we went through this process. And I think at the end of it, we came through it with, them still really respecting the agency and us parting ways as friends. And, I also then needed to deliver the news to the agency, which they were, the West Coast office at the time was very, I think, happy that I had done that. But, it was this moment of I'm so psyched that she stuck up for us, and that's awesome. And then, I also at the same time needed to turn around and say, but we need to go replace this revenue immediately.
Right.
And so yes, and.
Right.
Now,
it's a total gut check moment, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so now, I need all of you to show up, because we are going to start pitching like you've never seen before. And we did. And, I drove the team really, really hard in a very different way, obviously, than that client had been. But I was like, now we're building this together, and, we have to make sure that we make that up. We've got obligations to the organization as a whole, and we need to make sure that we're successful. And we did. It took us a few months, but we were able to replace it with a number of other accounts. It wasn't just one big win. It was, a number of accounts that kind of all added up to that original amount. And it was a really big team-building moment. And so Nicole had said during that time, she's like, geez, you're like the Velvet Hammer. And she actually had brought me in a hammer, wrapped in velvet. And she's like, you can really deliver news around the horn here and make everybody feel pretty good about it, even when it's not really all that great.
That's awesome. What a great story, and thank you for sharing that with us. I appreciate it. I want to switch tacks here a little bit, and I want to talk to you about what you see on the horizon in terms of some of the biggest trends you see that are going to impact how your agency and other agencies are going to operate in the future.
It's something that we spend a lot of time thinking about, of course, and it's one thing that, when we're looking together, and actually right now as a management team, we're in the process of meeting and thinking about our long-term planning, and a lot of the areas where we're focusing on, of course, always kind of building up our scientific acumen, but in addition to that, making sure that we're being really thoughtful about how messages are going to be delivered to audiences in the future. I think that's a big place where we focus, and Paul, who you know, who's also a PharmaVOICE 100 and celebrating that very shortly, is a big part of that, and a big part of our future of the agency. As our Chief Experience Officer, he's really looking at all the different ways that where we can be delivering these messages and ensuring that our target constituents are really being able to absorb them in the way that they want. And we've talked about that kind of approach for years, but I think we're finally at a place where we can see something like artificial intelligence really creating much more engaging ways to have conversations, and something that's constantly learning. We've been really forward-thinking and using a lot of these platforms and taking advantage of natural language processing capabilities and building chatbots and voice skills for the brands that we're working on. And in some instances, we've done a lot of industry firsts for that. But I think what's cool about it is since we've launched these different applications, we've logged hundreds of patients' encounters that give us better insights into how patients are talking, what it is that they want to know about, how they want to interact with brands, and it's making us smarter, better brand marketers. And I think that is a game changer for the industry as a whole. Like, we always have research, of course, at our fingertips, and we always do that when we're building brands. But I think now it's getting into a more real-time, how are they actually behaving in the moment, and what is it that they're looking for? How are they using their words? How are they using their peers? How are they actually engaging? That is, I think, going to be the biggest game changer for brand marketers moving forward.
I think you're spot on, and it's going to be an interesting next few years as we look to see how all this technology is going to change the way we engage with healthcare. I think it's going to be remarkable.
I'm excited. I think it's really cool. There's certain things that are kind of scary, right?
Yes.
I was in my car the other day, and I was noting that I needed to get my oil changed, and suddenly Audi was emailing me things about that. And I'm like, was that because of my phone? Was that because of my car? I'm a little concerned, but okay.
Somebody's always watching something, right? But at the same time, and look at what cars are going to be able to do in the future as you hold onto the steering wheel and predict that you're having a heart attack or a seizure. Nonetheless, and be able to turn itself off so that you don't hurt yourself or anybody else. So it's going to be, it's science fiction, some of it.
Yeah, no, it really is. And so I think, we're paying a lot of attention, and, Paul's very focused on how can we develop products and services for our clients that are focused on, digital therapeutics, companion digital, applications, advanced patient support tools, like enhanced analytics. How can we make our clients smarter, faster? So it's going to. You're right. It's going to be really cool, and it's just. I think about what my grandparents would think now if they could see how we do things. It would blow their minds. I can't imagine even what the next 4 years is going to bring.
I agree. It's accelerating exponentially. 20 years ago, we were still working with fax machines. So,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
And for those millennials, those are those machines you put the piece of paper in, and it came out the other side.
I can remember standing in front of a printer for hours doing, pitch, the PR clips, just
yes.
hitting copy after copy.
We won't even go into the microfiche, but we'll keep it there. So now I'm going to I'm going to challenge you to pick one moment from your fabulous career that you would define as a wow moment that really helped shape your career.
Gosh, I think, one, that is hard, but I have to say that I think, I don't know whether it was really the first set or the second set, but I think what has shaped my career the most was when I had my twins. And I think the reason that it shaped my career so much was because it adjusted how I behaved pretty drastically. I'd gone through a leadership class the year before I had the girls, and one of the biggest things I and those who rated me and Bruce at the time all agreed on was I needed a better work-life balance, right? Like I was leaking. And when you're a leader and you do that, it really impacts everybody else.
Sure.
And when I had the twins, the first set of twins, it was binary because they were so little. They were babies, and it was very much like I need to take care of these people. This is it. This is my thing, right? And so it really put everything into perspective. Everything started to click for me, and it wasn't that I was working any less hard. I was just being a lot more smart about the hours I was working and when I was doing it. And I'm still that way. I am very cognizant about making sure that I am working hard, and it kind of takes on all different hours of time. But I'm also very conscious about I don't need to email my team at 9 at night. I don't need to email my team on Saturday just because I want to get it done because I've got those 5 minutes. I can just get it done and save it.
Right.
And because of that, it was just a big eye opener for me because I was constantly. It wasn't that I was expecting my team to behave how I was behaving, but I was very much like I wanted to get things done, and so I kept moving things along really fast. And I think once I had a priority that was bigger than my work, I understood, that I needed to give people space to breathe.
Well, I think that's such a great lesson because it's true. You want to get it done. You have that 5 minutes to do it. But then that sends a signal to your team that you're working on a Saturday, you're working at 9 o'clock, and is that what's expected of them? And that's not what you wanted to put forward there. That's great. So I thank you so much. I have so thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today. I learned a lot, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. And I want to wish you continued great success.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast series. And thanks again to Cardinal Health Specialty Solutions for sponsoring this program. For more information, visit cardinalhealth.com/specialty solutions. We also encourage you to listen to additional episodes at pharmavoice.com/wow. This 2019 program is copyrighted by PharmaLinks, LLC.